Welcome. I'm Glenn Caruso, head football coach at the University of St. Thomas, here with AthleticDirectorU, talking about dynamics of family and college athletics. Today, I'm joined by Portia Hoeg and her husband, Josh Hoeg. Portia is the athletic director at several universities and colleges throughout her career, and Josh is the offensive coordinator at Gannon University. So happy to have you guys here. Thanks for joining us. So this is a very unique situation where both husband and wife are in college athletics. What are the dynamics that you face that just no one else who's not in your situation would face?
Absolutely. Every day is crazy and chaotic, and I like to say he's in season year-round and I'm in season year-round. So, time management is huge for us. There's always a team to cheer for. There's always student athletes for us to care for and get to know, and families for us to know. So it really expands our own personal family in ways that we never imagined. There's the institutions that I've worked at that become part of our family, and then it's the guys that he coaches that are also part of our family.
No doubt, and I think when you grow up in this profession, you hope that you find someone that is just willing to share the journey with you and be a part of it. Yeah. And we often don't think, hey, how about if that person happens to be in the same athletic department or in the same field as I? So what's that been like for you, Josh?
Especially with in the profession we are in, you need someone who understands what you do, has a life, is independent on their own, and can be that balance on both of the sides to where, she has a great understanding of what I go through on a day-to-day basis. She may not know all the minute details, but in her athletic department, she's around other football coaches. She's around other basketball and baseball and football and whatever, and she sees, some of the things that they're struggling with, or she sees the great things that they're doing. And so, I think sometimes she's a great sounding board for me because she gives me a different perspective, because I can sometimes get the blinders put on and I see our football program and where we're going and what we're trying to do, where she can sometimes open me up to the larger of, hey, this is the bigger picture. And conversely, I would like to think at times, when she's thinking about things, that she bounces ideas off me too. And then I can kind of give her my perspective as a coach and how I would feel about that.
I got to imagine there's tons of positives, like you mentioned, because you get the chance to have someone who has intimate knowledge of what you do. But I would also believe, like anything else, there's probably some downside to it. And there's sometimes, I don't know, maybe it's you want to come home and just shut off and not have to worry about that. What would be some possible negatives, albeit maybe small ones, that other families don't have to deal with?
Yeah, I think it's hard to turn it off. You're eating dinner and you want to be thinking about your family, or what are we going to go on vacation? And it's usually, well, this happened at work today, and how's your team doing? Or a recruit calls in the middle of the meal and it's like, okay, what does he want now? Is he coming or is he not coming? So it can be difficult to sometimes have those boundaries because we're two very passionate athletic people. So that's part of our fun. That's part of what we do for a living. I think that's one of the negatives, in that we don't do very well in turning it off.
And even though you're on the same page, you're in two different spots. So do you ever find yourself, Josh, where you come home and you're still on and Portia is turned off, and you've got to check yourself and say, you know what, I'll at least put it on pause right now and just take a little break?
Well, absolutely. The one thing that, I did have like a 45-minute drive, so I had that time to sometimes decompress, from when I left job to when I got home. But then, she didn't have the same thing. So there's times that I would still maybe be on and she would be off, or there's times where, it might be the inverse of that. We both live in fluid worlds. And so even if sometimes you kind of brought up the phone calls and stuff like that, sometimes we did finally both turn it off, and then things outside of your control kind of turn it back on. So you got to manage those times as well.
And certainly the support that you would want to give and get as a spouse, no matter what your significant other is doing, is crucial. But specifically for you guys, how have you managed the progress of each other's career and maybe even the pitfalls of them?
Yeah, it's been difficult. The first thing, at least from my perspective, is this is the most important thing. Everything else we'll figure it out. But being in the same place, being happy together, is the ultimate goal for our family. And so whenever opportunities come up, and they've come up on both sides, sometimes it's, hey, yeah, let's at least look into that. Or sometimes it's like, well, that's a great opportunity for me, but I don't know how necessarily that fits into what you're looking for, or what are you going to do? Because for me, obviously I want to progress along in my career, but it's not the same for me if she's not happy and satisfied in what she's doing in both her personal and professional life. So, maybe it narrows the opportunities down for us somewhat, but at the same time, like I've always told her, like if you get a great opportunity, let's go. And I think she feels the same way.
Well, I would think so, because she can hire you, but you can't be hiring her. So that's a pretty smart move. How about you, Portia?
Yeah, I mean, the same thing. We're always looking out for each other, and opportunities are going to present themselves. But first and foremost, it's got to be about our family, and is it going to be a good fit? But this is it. I sit in the stands during a lot of his games, when I'm not at my institution's games, and I think it could be hard to be just the wife in the stands. I know too much. I know too much about event management. I know too much about compliance. I know too much about, how a program is run. So it can be hard to hear the parents being critical of the coaching staff, or, everyone's the best referee and the best coach as they sit in the stands, right? That can be hard to be his cheerleader and to be that supporter when you hear all this negativity around you, win, lose, or draw. I mean, everyone thinks that they know better. So I try to keep my mouth shut and not engage or sit in areas where I know I'm not going to be engaging with those folks. And converse, in my line of work, sometimes there can be where he's going to hear things, or he's going to be engaged in ways that aren't necessarily positive. And being an athletic director is, I think, one of the I had a mentor tell me one time that it's one of the loneliest jobs you can have, because you can't necessarily be friends with your staff. You can be friendly, but you can't be friends because of the thought that you might be playing favorites, and you could really only look to your other colleagues at other institutions where there might be competitive advantages or disadvantages. So to have a partner, and I'd say he's my partner in this, it really helps you get through those difficult times where the parents might be blowing your phone up, or a coach sends you an inappropriate email late at night, or you're dealing with a tough student-athlete situation. It's nice to have someone that kind of understands the world.
Well, you bring up an interesting point of, do I know a little too much? And that, you would think, well, that's a nice problem to have, but really it brings up, what is something specific in your partnership that you've noticed, these are hurdles that, because we have this connectivity, I wouldn't necessarily, or a normal couple, myself or anybody else who's out there that are not both in college athletics, they wouldn't necessarily have to deal with.
Yeah, I mean, you have to be creative, because things are going to pop up that, again, we live in a fluid world. It's not uncharacteristic to get a call late at night from a student athlete that something's going on, or getting a call in her situation from a coach. And then, once you got to figure it out at that time. And we have a young child as well, so that adds the other dynamic into it of how do you be organized? How do you both do your job at a high level with all the unknown that's out there? So that, to me, I mean, is probably the thing that you have to figure out the most. You do have to be fluid. You have to be able to be like, hey, I got to go do this right now, and then still be able to make it work with getting your responsibility done for your job, but at the same time helping out your partner whenever you possibly can. And there's certain times of the year where she's got to bear the burden of most of the home stuff. I mean, I'm gone. It's during season. I'm not there very often. And then there's other times where it may be a little bit busier for her, where I'm able to bear a little bit more of the responsibility. But, again, you still, if you get the call that your 2-year-old's sick at daycare, and it's 2:00, like, hey, what do you got? What do you got? How are we going to make this work? And then you just do it. I mean, you figure it out together.
I'm here with Portia Hoeg and Josh Hoeg. My name is Glenn Caruso, here with AthleticDirectorU, talking about the family and the balance of the family for specifically a couple where both members are in college athletics. Tremendously unique and interesting perspective. So Portia, you had mentioned a little bit earlier about that outside criticism. And I think we all know when we get into sports, it's going to be there. I mean, it's pretty ignorant to think it's not, but whether you choose to listen to it, whether you choose to absorb it, that's up to you. How do you handle that outside criticism, whether it be you of the job that you're doing or your partner in the job that he's doing or not doing.
Yes. Well, we definitely have frank conversations behind closed doors, right? Like, this is what I think is going on. But when I hear people in stands, I really just try to be the bigger person, the same as I would if it were my own athletic program. Walking the stands, and it's a focus on the student athlete, and the parents are just trying to be supportive as best as they know how. There are times where I'll just say, hey, cut it out. Like, be more positive, be about those kids and less about the coaching and less about the officials, and try to shift their focus in a positive way. Because they can sometimes just dig, and that's just what they choose to do. But I can't engage in that. Or like I said, I will physically put myself or our son, if we're watching a game, we'll just go somewhere else. We'll walk around, we'll go play in the grass on the side, and just don't deal with it, because no good is going to come of that. And the team is already, if it's a tough game, the team is already feeling some type of way about what's going on the field. There's no need to add to that. You just have to be the bigger person in a lot of those situations. And the same for if it were my own athletic program. Be supportive of those coaches. I hear what's going on with them. It's a tough job. I understand fully a lot.
Which one are you talking about? Yours, because both are tough.
Yes.
And you don't have the opportunity, Coach, to just separate yourself from the situation. So how do you handle it?
I just try to remind myself that the people that I care about, their opinions are the ones that matter to me. So my family's, my wife's like, hey, the heck you doing? Then, I better take a look in the mirror and figure out what I am doing. My coach, the other coaches are the people that I work with. I care a lot about their opinions and care a lot about them as human beings. And then our players, the people involved with our program, those are the people that, I understand that someone may be yelling and saying that I'm this or that, or we don't know this or that. And at the end of the day, they just want to see their child or the person that they care about on the field be successful. So, and however they decide to direct their anger, that's up to them. I don't have any influence over that. The only thing I can influence is my family, people I work with, and then the team that I'm coaching. So I try to put all my energy into that type of stuff.
And you had mentioned earlier, Josh, about how difficult, it is what it is, but trying to balance all of those different family times and when something has to happen. In your toughest of times, what are the largest stressors when it comes to your needs as a husband and a father and your needs as a coach?
That's always the fine line, I think, is how do you be a great husband and a great father and also balance that with your professional career? And sometimes you may swerve back and forth, but it does come down to a priority system. I think everything does. You have to ask yourself, what are the most important things in my life? And then you got to rank them out. And then whenever you come up with one of those decisions of what should I do here, as long as you go back to your priority system, I think that helps out a lot. Also, putting yourself in a situation where you're working with other good people, I think is helpful as well. Like the head coach that I work for, he has a young daughter as well. He's got a family. Like, he understands that things come up. Now, there's things that we absolutely have to be there for. But if it's something that's like, hey, man, you can make recruiting calls from home. Go be with your family, or why are you still here? You got all your work done. Like, he's great about giving you that time and space. Like, if I need to take my kid to a doctor's appointment at 9 a.m., I'm able to do that. And I think she would say the same thing, is she's worked with some really good people that are able to, if she's got to be out of there, kind of step in and help her out. So I think the situation that you're in, helps that as well.
I would agree. And Portia, when you're leading, I don't know, when you're leading an athletic department that may have 15 or 20 or 25 different coaches, and it's continually on your mind, it's difficult to find time to take care of those things that Josh was mentioning are so important. But what do you do? How do you make time? How does that manifest? What are the things you do to put aside the rest of the stuff going through your head and focus on those things that are of the utmost importance to you too?
Absolutely. I'm a big planner. I live and die by my Google Calendar. So weeks, months in advance, I'll get with them and say, okay, we've scheduled this doctor's appointment. I've got all of my staff meetings are already plugged in. All of my individual meetings, all the athletic contests are plugged in. Here's where I'm going to a game. here's where I can watch it on webcasting, so that I think puts me at a peace of mind that there's going to be those things that pop up, but as far as things that we know ahead of time, we try to plan for those. Okay, what's your schedule? Are you going to have Sundays off? Are you going to have Mondays off for football practice? When can you go in late? Can you take him to daycare on these days? I can take him on these days. Having a staff that understands, because I also expect them to have time with their family and those who are important to them. So it's important that I am showing them how to do that. I work as hard as anyone, but I'm also creative in how I work. We always have our technology, right? Our smartphones. I can check email from anywhere. So if I have to leave early to take our kids somewhere, or so that my son can see him and he'll go watch a practice, or we'll go eat lunch in the locker room, or however creatively we spend that family time, or eat at the concession stand during a basketball game, we'll do that. But some of that is just making sure we're planning. We know each other's schedules. We know the ebb and flow of the academic year, because a lot of things are cyclical. So we make the best of what we can with the time that we have.
Agreed. And I know it's tough enough when there's one person in college athletics to, for both people to retain their identities. And that's such a huge deal. What are some of the things that either of you would do to guard against the losing of those identities, because you're in such a busy world and you're responsible for so many people? Sometimes those identities can get buried. What do you guys do to guard against that?
I don't know if we do. I mean, there's times,
I don't know if we do. Bad question.
Yeah, I mean, no, he'll come to a trustee event with me, and I think he's good at being in the role that he's in. He's not necessarily Josh Hoeg, offensive coordinator in that moment. He's Portia Hoeg, the athletic director's husband. And, he's great at mingling and being at those functions. And if we're at my team's events, a basketball game or a tennis match, he's there just to support and, be that friendly person. And I like to think when I'm
Yeah, and likewise, she comes to my things as well, our games or our team functions, whatever it may be. I think it's just important to understand the role that you're in at that moment. Sure, I'm a football coach. That's what I do. It's what I'm passionate about, but that's not all I am. And so, when I'm at her functions, I don't need to be that guy. I don't need to be turned on. I'm going to engage you. We're going to have conversations. I'm going to support her and try to prop her up as much as I can in front of her people. And then, once we're in the inverse situation, then she does the same thing. She does a great job of kind of being there, adding her 2 cents, propping me up in those situations. So, I think we do a good job of having that ebb and flow of, hey, this is kind of yours, this is kind of mine, this is when we're together, and this is different at home.
So I'd be remiss if I didn't ask, are there times where you are sitting at the dinner table, or times where you're watching a movie and the criticism of one another comes out, because you do know each other really intimately, and you also know the profession really, really well. So are there times where that kind of comes out a little bit?
I mean, I would be lying if said we didn't have differences of views or perspectives on certain things, or that we haven't
You're saying
been
that
sitting
very nicely.
Yeah,
Yes.
Or that we haven't been sitting on the couch, conversing back and forth on differing sides of opinions about certain things. But, at the end of the day, even if, we have our differences, if it's one of her ideas that she brought up to me, even if I can give her a different perspective or different thought on it, which maybe that turns her into, well, you're right, I shouldn't do that. Or maybe that confirms even more for her that she should do it. I think that's kind of our role in those situations. And we don't have to agree, because we're not going to, we're different people.
Portia's nodding adamantly.
So we're not going to agree, but again, that's not what it's about. It's, hey, let's bounce these things off each other. We may argue a little bit about it, but at the end of the day, that's either going to deter you from it or make it even stronger in your mind.
Because at the end of the day, that is something that, even though it might be a little bit of friction or tough at that moment, it is a blessing that most other couples don't have, as a spouse that understands that.
Absolutely. And working in athletics, I work with a lot of different personalities. And he's a different personality than me, and that's a good thing. I mean, I would be remiss if I didn't learn from those differing opinions, whether it's someone on my admin team or my husband at home. It's just another person to help me see things in a different way, and that tends to be the way that I operate. I like to hear a lot of different ideas, and maybe what I'm already thinking is on point, or maybe I need to tweak it based off of the feedback I've received from others. But I think that's an invaluable tool to have someone that you're able to do that with, and fortunate that they happen to be in my household.
Agree 100%. So we have have time for one more question, and it's one of my favorite questions I like to ask anybody that I speak with, whether I'm interviewing them or just talking over a cup of coffee. Josh, and I'll ask both of you, so think about it. Josh, if you could go back to Josh Hoeg at age 22 and tell him something that you know now that's going to benefit him when he's sitting in this chair at your age, what would you tell him?
I would tell him that, you are who you surround yourself with, more than anything. Like, we have a coach on our staff, one of his big things is show me your friends, I'll show you your future. And while I was lucky enough to have good people around me at the age 22, like, what could I have done to expand that? What other influences could I have brought into my life, especially early on, that would have helped me grow even more from where I'm at now? So it would probably be around those lines. Like, I'm big on the people make the plays. Like, sure, the campuses are nice, we have all this, bells and whistles, but it's the people that's going to fill it up, and how do you feel comfortable? Who are you around? Who's going to challenge you? Who's going to grow you? If you just stay in the same place and do the same thing without the opportunity to grow from it, you're always going to get the same result.
History would prove that to a T. There's no doubt. Portia, what would you tell a 22-year-old Portia?
Step by faith. Everything will happen as it's supposed to. Just continue the path and trust that God has a plan for you, and just follow that path and all will turn out how it's supposed to turn out.
Sometimes it's tough to see because the angst occurs when we can't see the forest through the trees, but someone else can.
But that test will be part of your testimony.
Well, this has been awesome, and it's the first opportunity I've had to sit down with someone that have people who are in your position and of your ilk, so thank you very much. And for Glenn Caruso from AthleticDirectorU, so happy to be here with both Portia Hoeg and Josh Hoeg, and we hope that you tune in soon. Make it a great day.